Hi, everyone. This is Pam Torrey from Ingage, and you're listening to the InGaged Podcast. We know tech is changing the way people market and sell now more than ever. And on this show, I sit down with sales and marketing thought leaders and experts to learn how you can create, share, and measure your way to success. In today's episode, we're deep diving into the ever-evolving world of AI with Ben Knaus from Siro, a company that's right in the thick of it. AI is everywhere, and it's changing the game for business leaders and sales teams alike. But how do you know what's actually valuable and what is just noise? We'll break down how to assess AI tools, what makes a great AI tech stack, and whether the type of AI model even matters. Plus, we'll explore how different approaches to building AI, whether it's VC-funded disruption or business-driven solutions, are shaping the future. And of course, we'll cap it off with some trends to watch this year in 2025. Let's dive in. Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We absolutely love the Engaged team and are really excited about some of the work that we've done in the past and where we're headed in the future together. So I couldn't be more pumped to be on here.
Well, we love working with the crew over at Siro, and we've gotten to know you guys really well over the last year or so. We've been working together, but I don't know that all of our listeners are super acquainted with you or with Siro. So, can you give our listeners a snapshot of your background and then what brought you to Siro?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. So I have a background in technology. I have, since graduating from college, and really before college, I always had interest in the world of technology. But since graduating from college, worked at technology companies, started my career at bigger companies, and for the last few years have been at startups. I've always been in sales roles, no matter the company, and throughout my time selling right? Or in person when we can do it. I have used technology like Ciro's. There are companies out there, Gong, Chorus, some other ones that have existed for 10 plus years now at this point, I'd say. And growing up through sales have literally been the most helpful tools that I have used myself. I, when I started selling, was not the crazy, most natural seller ever. I had my strengths, I had my weaknesses, right? It was always really, really hard for me to be able to assess, though, outside of kind of gut feel and the one or two calls I could have a manager sit on every month or so. And as soon as I started using tools like Gong, which is really just the equivalent of kind of Siro for the Zoom world that we're on right now, right? Um, was able to finally kind of spend the time and have the access that I needed to begin to kind of slingshot my career. So I can't tell you how many freaking calls I've listened to of myself, how many of my peers' calls I've listened to over the last 10 or so years, and really just had an affection for and loved using a tool like Gong. And at the last company I was working for, in passing, had heard a little bit about Siro and talked to the leadership and the early team over here, and was somewhat baffled by the fact that it didn't exist in a field sales that I think could arguably use it the most, because I was in an office with all of my leaders when I was growing up through sales, right, and trying to get better and whatnot. But that is not the case for field sales teams. So it was kind of like a personal, again, affection for the technology and what it had done for me, and a problem that I thought was even bigger than the problem that I had, and wanting to help others solve that problem, and loving the team that landed me at Siro, where I am today.
Yeah, it seems like I've been in the home improvement industry for about 5.5 years at this
Yeah.
point, and this industry is so interesting because it was very slow to adopt a lot of technology, but this industry immediately saw the value in a tool like Zero, like
Yeah.
immediately recognized what value it could bring to their sales organization. And I don't think I've ever seen anything get adopted as fast as I have this, the appointment recording functionality and the AI analysis. It's been really surprising. So that takes me to my next question for you, which is that AI is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's ubiquitous at this point, and every company seems to be launching something AI, whether they started off in that space or not. I mean, even we at Ingage have functionality in our software to help you with writing the copy for your presentation and finding images.
Yeah.
So how can business leaders and sales teams really just cut through the noise and almost like cutting through the nonsense to figure out what's actually valuable?
Yes, that is a great question. I'll start by saying like AI is everywhere right now because it deserves to be and it should be. Um, of all of the technology trends that I've seen, and I wasn't a part of like the very early few, this is by far like the most helpful kind of category of technology. So everyone is trying to capitalize on it for good reasons. Like it undoubtedly helps you do your job more efficiently if the use case is right, right? But back to your question more so, I think cutting through the noise, even though AI is becoming a part of everybody's technology, as it should be, you still have to make a decision because the technology plus AI or minus AI, but the technology itself is solving a problem that you have, right? Like, I think the reason that this sort of technology caught on so quickly in home improvement is because of some of the stuff that I was just mentioning and why I moved over to Siro, right? Like, field sales teams are out in the field. They are away from their managers. Everyone involved in a sales organization wants to improve close rates, improve NSLI, right? Improve what drives the business forward, revenue. And uniquely in these industries, it is really hard to do that because you're geographically away from your manager when you need help or your rep to try to give help. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, when you're making a decision, you shouldn't just be looking at AI. You should be looking again at your problems specifically. You should be trying to solve the problems that your business has. You're trying to solve the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of your organization doing really well in selling, the other 80% not doing really well. You're not buying something like Siro because it's AI. You're buying something like Siro because it helps you solve a really big pain that you have as a business. So I think it's just really important to always bring yourself back first to the pain that you're trying to solve. And then, of course, if AI can help you more effectively do that than just like a technology, for example, that just records, but you have to go listen to everything. AI is not doing some of that work for you. Like, consider AI then, but you got to be solving that problem before anything.
So you set me up really well for where I want to go next. Thank you for that. So we have to be trying to solve a problem. We're not just adding tech or adding AI for the sake of putting AI in our tech stack.
Yes.
But when you're trying to build out that tech stack, when you're trying to understand, when you're trying to assess the tools that are out there on the market to solve your problem, how do you go about approaching that? How do you figure out what kind of criteria or what kind of questions you should be asking as a sales or business leader when you're looking to bring these tools into your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So AI, like for AI specifically, I, at least from my personal experience, what I've seen AI be truly helpful for is those use cases or workflows that are not mindless, but don't require like an incredible amount of expertise, that are like, that have high volumes of it, i.e., like a great example, one that always made sense to me early on when AI was happening was lawyers spend God how knows how long in documents, reading through those documents and looking for relatively simple things, right? And when they find those things, they make those edits, you're good to go, right? But like, that is a kind of a voluminous activity that's not, again, mindless, but a computer can understand how to do. So I think AI specifically, you want to be looking for use cases like that. You brought up a great one that you guys help with, like copywriting, right? You can, ask an AI to, in your tone, write something that would maybe take you, I don't know, 3-5 minutes to write, and it's done in 10 seconds. Answering a call or scheduling an appointment, like like those simple high volume things are really, really great use cases for AI. Now, I think when you're making a decision on, so I guess as kind of aligning the last two questions, first, if you're going to make a decision on technology, you want to make sure that that technology is actually solving a pain, right? Many of those pains that you have are those kind of voluminous, not super complicated tasks. So, like great place for AI to come in, right? I think there's a few other things that you consider when you're deciding on like an actual technology to bring into your stack and other criteria that you should think about. Um, First is kind of like there's a difference between like point solution AI stuff and like an actual platform. And I think it's an important distinction to make. The point solution stuff might just be like the I need this email written for me, and it fits really well into an existing solution like you guys have, right? And you layer those into pieces in your platform more generally, that it fits well. And then you're kind of in a world potentially of like a full on new platform, something like Siro, right? Where like it's the first time that something like this has really been happening in a said industry. And I think it's really important to think about potential like user groups using technology for platform, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is there are multiple, and I kind of default back to Siro all the time, but there are multiple potential users of a platform like Siro. And like the fundamental thing that Siro is doing with AI that like creates a big unlock is the transcription and like the deduction down to key things, right? And like answering key things that you want of a 2-hour conversation really quickly. But I think it's really important to consider every user group that can achieve something through that kind of fundamental core thing happening. What I mean by that is it's not just like a tool that a manager might use to want to answer a question that they might have. You should be looking for tools that like help every user group that is interacting with that technology do their jobs more efficiently. I also think it's important to, this might lead you into your next question here, but it's important to, at this point, I think also like understand the limits of AI to a degree. It's really, really good at doing those kind of simple, really repetitive, voluminous tasks. It's getting better and better, like literally every day at doing the more complicated things. But there are still bits and pieces of jobs that require the expert kind of eye, right? And I think it's when you're considering moving forward with the technology, important to understand from that technology and whoever you're working with from that technology, right? Like, truthfully, what are those limits and what do I still get to do or like need to do to get the total value out of something like this? Because again, defaulting back to Siro talking about, how our customers use our technology. We can get you anywhere you want to get in a conversation and answer any question you want. But what we can't like tell you yet is stuff like, was the tonality perfect for that, response that you had for the customer, right? And so I think it's important to look at a tool like in the AI space that can help you make improvements, but also understand what you still are going to need to do, so that you can most effectively use that tool and get the total value out of that tool.
So tying into that, if I'm looking to bring AI into my organization, let's say that I want to help out my content writing team. I want to bring AI into my business. What are the best ways that I can go about assessing the solutions and so that I know I'll trust them to execute within my business at the end of the day before I commit? Like before I sign that contract, is there anything you would recommend that I do to ensure that, the solutions I'm looking to bring in would work for my business?
Yeah, again, I think it's like maybe the most important thing to do is to get the like reality of like where those bounds are, right? Ideally from the company that's helping provide that service. But I think another really valuable tool is going to others and having truthful conversations. Like another thing that I've realized with AI is it's really exciting. Therefore, everyone gets really excited, right? And
yes, they do.
Yeah, and it's an awesome thing. Like it's a great thing. It's moving adoption of this sort of technology forward, and it's pushing like realities of this sort of technology. But at the same time, it occasionally creates kind of like a false reality to a degree. And so I think everything that you can do, again, with a company that might be providing you your service or like trusted advisors in a network, whatnot. Um, you can have like real conversations about what it's actually solving versus like the sizzle reel kind of stuff, right? Um, and then uh, I think honestly that's probably the most important piece right there. Like ideally, actually, yeah, I think that's probably the most important piece. Maybe we can.
Yeah, I think that it's so important to remember that other people are using these solutions as well. I mean, we often will reference check, if I'm going to go buy a software, I'll often be like, "Hey, do you have anybody who looks like me who bought the software, like who has the same firmographic data as my business, distributed company, a certain number of employees, certain volume. I want to talk to someone whose company looks like mine." And, I think that we have to remember that with AI solutions, you should be doing that too. Get the
Yeah.
reference check, find out if it doesn't do what it says on the box. And is it actually working in someone's business?
Yeah, and ask the uncomfortable questions in those conversations too, right? Like what did you think you were going to be able to do, but not, be able
Yeah.
to actually accomplish?
Yeah. And I think in this industry, especially, we have so much opportunity to do that because there are so many great events. There are, regional dealer events. There are a lot of the in-person sales conferences, in-person tech conferences. Like, ask around.
Yeah. That's the best part about these industries is that they're incredibly tight and, everybody knows everybody. And, you do have those trusted advisors.
Yeah. Someone is using it. You can find somebody who has a story to tell. Well, I have some questions for you just about AI kind of a little bit more generally. This is not an area that I spend a lot of time thinking about because I'm a marketer. I'm all about that like human touch. Let's get ooey gooey with our feelings. Let's get people to feel something and buy our product. But I know because I work at a tech company that it's also important to understand a little bit more about how some of these solutions work. Because if you're going to bring something into your tech stack, you should have a reasonable understanding of what it does and how it gets there. So I hear all the time about all the different solutions that are on the market, all of the things that provide, the base for a lot of these AI solutions. So OpenAI, Google's doing stuff, Meta's doing things. We've got different Chinese companies that are moving into the space with different chips and models. Does it matter to like if I'm a home improvement contractor, I'm looking to bring AI into my business. I want to have my team using one of these tools. How much does the model actually matter when you're a business user? Or is it just like a case of, does it work for you? How would you advise that somebody approach that situation where, maybe a company is like, oh, look at which model we use. We're so much better than the others. Like, does that actually matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would say is that like the majority of what contractors will be using, or really like any end user in any industry of any AI, is a technology that uses another like actual kind of LLM or base AI technology, right? Like the vast majority of AI solutions out there come from, to your point, one of these kind of LLM providers, OpenAI, Anthropic, a couple of Chinese upstarts, right? Um, so more often than not, they're like your providers are probably going to be providing you like basically the same AI. There are certainly nuances to the base level providers. Some of them do certain things slightly better than the others. Some of them, have slightly different tonality than others when answering back, kind of at their core, right? Um, and they're all changing and leapfrogging each other every 5 seconds. So what I'd say is that I think the cool thing as kind of a consumer of AI from other companies that use, the LLM providers is that if the company that you're working through is somewhat up to date, like they've built an infrastructure that they can like kind of interchange these things in and out, right? When one becomes that much better at a certain task than another, and it makes sense to use that as opposed to what they're using right now, like they should be able to switch it to a degree. Um, so I think that, like, to the end consumer of AI, it's less important to think about all this stuff because flexibly, like the technology companies that are providing it will always be super, super in touch with if there are differences, and making sure that they're using the best stuff. There are certain things that you can do at like the application level so that that technology company can do to like inject, different information that they might have that, these large LLMs aren't trained off of yet and whatnot. But my kind of general philosophy there is it is insane how much better, how quickly all of these LLMs get every, month, 2 months, 3 months. And even when you're like injecting your, specific to you kind of data into some of this stuff, the LLM that comes out 3 months from now probably found access to very similar stuff to that and is like even better now at that, even though you had the specific stuff a couple months ago. So like, I guess the LLMs are getting so freaking good so quickly that I think you really don't have to worry very much as the end consumer of the technology about what's happening at that level. And if you find like, the technology company that's using those LLMs that you trust, and that are somewhat on their game, like they're going to do that work for you.
That's good to know. Makes me feel a little bit better about not being super fluent in all of the options available. So we talked a little bit earlier about the difference between companies incorporating AI into existing solutions versus more of like the VC funded startups that we've seen kind of dive bombing this industry lately that are looking to disrupt things. So how do you see those two different approaches playing out specifically within home remodeling and home services? And who do you think is going to win the race in the end?
Yeah. I don't know that there's like a really, really good answer to this yet, or at least I don't have a super strong opinion. I think there are certainly like use cases and companies that have been around for a while that have a lot of data that are like really well positioned to do things with AI that like an upstart wouldn't be able to do because for the most part they don't have access to that data, right? But I think the thing that hurts big companies generally, and it's not just with AI, it's just in general, right, is that they're generally slower to move. Startups can be super, super quick and fast, trying new things, A/B testing, so on and so forth. Um, I think you think about really, really big companies like Google, like there are just some companies out there that are really positioned well with AI, but like so much of their existing business and revenue from the technology that they've built comes from the things that they've already built and they can't cannibalize and all of that stuff. Potentially won't do the crazy groundbreaking stuff with AI that a startup might do because again they just can't cannibalize so much of what they already have going and these existing technology that they've built. Um, so I do think there's room for both. I think everything always comes down to execution, like it does with any business. And some big companies will execute well and have the advantages that they have. And some startups will execute really, really well. And even with the constraints that they have, but the flexibility and speed and velocity at which they're able to attack some of these things will succeed as well.
Well, before I let you go, I do have to ask you the one question that I make everybody answer when they come on my show, which is what's one trend that you think businesses should be paying attention to right now and why?
Yeah. I mean, the quick cop out answer, and then I'll actually give, more nuanced one. It is really cool to see how far this industry has come with technology, typically being one of the slower adopters. So I think now more than ever, the majority of contractors and businesses out there are on the boat, right? Are on the technology boat. And that's the really scary part where like if you're not on that boat when the majority are, like you are actually in the dust. We're outside of the early adopter right now. We're fully going. So you just got to be in tune. Um, the thing that the more nuanced one, or I think maybe less talked about one, is I think it'll become really, really important for people to get good at prompting. And this is a total AI answer here, but Prompting, just to define it, is essentially like your ability using natural language, writing this stuff out, right, to get an answer that you want from an LLM or from AI. And just like in sales, right, there are really simple, not like well-crafted questions that you can ask to not really get the information that you need. Or on the other end of the spectrum, there are really, really well-crafted, timed, so on and so forth questions that you can ask, prompts that you can use to get the next level of what you need to effectively do your job. And AI is, and basically kind of the output that you get as an end user of AI is all about how you prompt, almost more than the model itself, so on and so forth. So I think those that get really, really good at prompting will disproportionately take advantage of AI. Great examples. Again, I bring it back to Siro, like the folks that are in using our Ask Siro tool and asking kind of 3 or 4 really specific follow-up questions end up getting really quickly in a minute or so to what they actually want to, versus just that one general question that half answers what you're looking for. So I think prompting is going to become huge, and you can go and practice that on ChatGPT's website. You can practice that, in any chat AI tool. But just playing around with the questions and thoughtfully asking those questions will yield way better results.
Well, that is fascinating. That's not something I even thought about with bringing AI into your business, is that you have to know how to ask it the right questions. So that is a really interesting thing to think about. And I'm going to have to get better at it myself.
I'm still working on it as well.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks a ton for having me. Again, couldn't appreciate and be more excited about the InGaged crew and what we're doing together, and excited to see where all this technology goes. I think everyone is, especially in this industry, like focused on it right now, but focused on the right things and solving the right things. And there's just going to be so much transformation in the next however many years. It's going to be really cool to be a part of.
Most definitely. Thanks for listening to the InGaged Podcast. Be sure to visit InGaged.io for more information on how to create, share, and measure your way to success. If you love the InGaged Podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time.